Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. If I could ask everyone to please rise and join me for a pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. So the board is reserved this time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board are asked to stand, give their name and address, and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less per individual or group. Concerns and comments during this session should be directly related to items listed on the proposed agenda for this meeting. Audience members seeking a response should complete a board correspondence sheet and return it to the district clerk, Christine Slagle. Audience members are asked to adhere to social distancing regulations when addressing the Board of Education. Is there anyone who would like to address the board tonight?
I'm Andy Ludwig. I live at 30 Ryan Place in Fredonia, and I'd like to call everyone's attention to addendum item 6G, number 1. It says approve a contract between Leadership for Educational Achievement Foundations and the Fredonia Central School District for administrative coaching services for the 2021 school year totaling $23,100. And as a taxpayer, I have a real hard time understanding why our administrators need coaching to the tune of $23,100. Most of our administrators make six-figure salaries. And if they're not doing a good job and they need coaching, it's the superintendent's job to help them improve their performance. So I don't understand why in financially strapped times, the board is considering spending $23,100 on coaching services for our administrators. And if our administrators need some professional development to continue their jobs, they should take upon that expense themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board tonight? No? If not, we will close that up. We have a proposed consent agenda. The adoption of the consent agenda upon a motion and a second, an affirmative vote by members present approves each and every item so designated. However, prior to the adoption of the consent agenda, any board member may remove any item from the consent agenda. This item will then come up for discussion as part of the regular agenda. The purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite routine matters so the board has more time to deal with substantive matters. So if I could bring that proposed agenda to the floor with a motion.
I would like to pull out.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We just need to bring it to the floor.
Okay.
Is that a second?
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Hawk made the motion, Ms. Powell-Fortness seconded it. Now, if you would like to pull any item out.
I would like to, from new business, pull out D1.
And that was D1.
D1.
Okay, page 5. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions, concerns? And we have the addendum items also that will be, they are not part of consent, but they will be acted on individually. Okay? Yeah, we should. If we should, there is policy on page 4, item under new business 8A1. We have a policy number 5676. It's a privacy and security for student data and teacher and principal data. And we're just going to ask we're going to ask to waive the second reading on that. So we will pull that out of the consent and act on that one item individually.
Brian, I have a question.
Yes.
Is any of A on the consent? I thought we were, that whole,
The entire 8A will be consent, other than 8A1 number 5676.
Okay,
Other than that,
misunderstood.
just that one policy will not be consent. We will be bringing that, we will ask to bring that to the floor.
okay, I had a question on 5660.
Okay, so you would like to pull that one out?
Yes, and 8241.
8241, okay, we can pull all three of those out and have those for discussion. So the other 5 of those items will be part of consent, but those 3 we will discuss. Okay?
Excuse me, what was your first one again?
I wanted to mention something on 5660
5660, okay.
and 8241.
Okay, we're all good? Okay, so other than those items, and 8D1, we are consent agenda. So all those in favor of approving that consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. We have, start the meeting, we have special presentations and board recognition presentations. Ms. Keckert, you're up.
So first and foremost, I just really want to extend my appreciation to each and every one of you in the Board of Education. Truly, the work that you do admirably. The work of a Board of Education is so, I think, oftentimes not truly understood until you are a member of the board, and then you begin to recognize the time and energy, the effort that you put into it, and the knowledge that you gain throughout the course of the time that you serve. So I truly, truly just want to say I appreciate everything that you do. I recognize every board member's true commitment, and it's not lost in the day-to-day work that we do. So as part of my appreciation and in following in the footsteps of the past superintendent, I opted to donate to a cause in your honor. And so the cause that the Board of Education I've chosen for the Board of Education is for the Timothy Vogt Memorial Fund. Mrs. Vogt is a teacher, a member of our Fredonia family who lost her husband this summer in a motorcycle accident. And she started the memorial fund in his honor, and I just feel that this will help to bring some peace her way in recognizing that you, the Board of Education, are alongside her. So thank you for the work you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, he was taken from us very young. It's sad.
Very sad.
Next up, Ms. Greeno, the FTA president.
Good evening. Members of the Board of Education, thank you so much for the time and care you devote to our school community, for your thoughtful dialogue and your support of teachers. In appreciation and gratitude for your service, the FTA wishes to donate a children's book to the district library. In your honor, of course. The book I've selected is called Up the Creek by Nicholas Oldland. It is the story of a bear, a moose, and a beaver out in the wild. They spend most of the day arguing over who's going to do what and when, but when a situation arises, they discover that working together is the best method for success. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Greeno. I'm hoping that I would be able to take that book out of the library sometime. Okay, thank you. It would be very beneficial, I'm sure. Next, Mr. Paskey. You're hiding behind the pillar.
I am. On behalf of the Fredonia Administrators Association, I just want to thank the board for your commitment to everyone in our district, all of our stakeholders, and recognize the fact that you do this thankless job as volunteers. So thank you so much for all of the time, commitment, and love, blood, sweat, and tears that you put into our district. It is greatly appreciated. The FAA has donated a book to our high school library on your behalf, and the book is a story of the life of Frederick Douglass. and it is a companion book to our U.S. history course. So we're honored to be able to do that for you. Also, this is kind of just the thing that I like, chocolate, and I'd like to share some of that with you. Hopefully it'll bring some joy to you as well.
Thank you, Darren.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick.
That's a good one, too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Pastor. My girls will know this.
I know how you spell.
I know.
Thank you. And chicken wings too. If he wants chicken wings, we'll get him some chicken wings. Whatever you want. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Douglas has led a very interesting life, hasn't he? Next up, we have Ms. Rebecca Heminger.
So Mrs. Heminger is not able to be here tonight. She asked me to present on her behalf, as well as Mrs. Forbes and Mrs. Ambrose. So both the CSEA and the SSSA are also donating books to our libraries in your name. All of the books donated tonight will have placards in them denoting that they are donations from in honor of the Board of Education. So for the CSEA, they will be donating a few popular graphic novel ebooks, the new Diary of a Wimpy Kid book and the Dog Man book. Mrs. Gruber assures me both are very popular and well-read series that are enjoyed and very funny. And then the SSSA is donating A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This is a fiction book, a work of fiction, and very popular as well. So both groups wanted me to extend their thanks for all the work you do. I'll echo what everyone else has said, and of course on my behalf as well, thank you very much for everything you do for the district.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Slagle. So, okay, that's great. So next up, we have approval of minutes for the last meeting. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So moved.
Mr. Johnston, and a second on that.
Second.
Ms. Colo. Any questions, comments, corrections? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next up, we have the financial treasurer's report and the review the budget status reports for June, July, and August. Mr. Forbes.
If it would be okay, I would like to address A and B together, June separately from July and August, and then after I do that, if there's any questions, I'll try to address those. So the issues along the way, and by the way, thank you to the board for your patience with the June and July and August reports. I know that we're a little bit behind the ball here, but with the audit being delayed because of them working remotely, I didn't want to give out, especially with some of the data that we have, I didn't want to give out any correct figures, so appreciate the patience there. Back in the spring of 2019, we never would have had the knowledge that we would be facing the things that we've faced since then. And back in the spring of 2019, we talked about changing the philosophy of how we were building the budget so that we would slowly bring the fund balance down to a more acceptable level to the board. And we talked about various ways that that may happen. Then COVID happened, and things changed, and the plan kind of got delayed a little bit. So taking a look at the June figures, we're currently showing an increase in fund balance of approximately $445,000. And you may say, well, how did this happen, and how did we get there? Well, there's a whole bunch of things that occurred. One, we had, and I should say that in the budget process, we built in an amount of money that we carry forward as fund balance to help offset the taxes. That goes together with your revenue to offset your expenditures. So in the 1920 budget, we had carried about approximately $800,000 for that purpose. The numbers that I'm going to talk about next are actually numbers that came in above those projections where I was carrying amounts already. So we'll start, contract transportation, we were under expended by $318,000. We didn't pay for April, May, or June to first student, and therefore it's over $100,000 a month. That's an unexpected underspent amount. We also made a change to what we did with our debt service payment in June. You may recall that we did another bond anticipation note instead of going to a full bond. The reason that we did that was that we would only have to pay the interest, and it would give us flexibility at the end of this coming school year to again do the same thing if we were in a case where we needed to have additional funds available. By not doing the principal payment, that helped us out there. In athletics, between coaching and contractual expenses for spring sports, we were down about $100,000 below what we had anticipated. We also did not do the $100,000 capital outlay project because we switched architects. We had about $100,000 savings in the area of electric and gas based upon the warm winter that we had. And we also were down about $30,000 from where we would typically be as average for substitute teacher salaries. That's the expense side. On the revenue side, we also had decreases. We had a reduction in building aid based on budget to actual of about $200,000. That's reflective of the principal and interest payments that we had made in the previous year. We had a reduction of about $100,000 in excess cost aid, which is your high-cost special education students. That's because in the year prior, I should explain, categorical aid is based on things you spend in one year, you get aid in the next year. So in 18-19, we had a decrease in high-cost special education students, so the corresponding payment in 19-20 was less. We also had about $78,000 less for transportation aid. Similar reason, if you don't spend it, you don't get it. We were down on our extra runs for special ed because we were down on our number of students for special ed. And also we had to absorb this past August about $49,000, which was a 20% aid cut to the excess cost aid that we did have coming in. So when you combine all those things together and close the books out, it puts you up to that $445,000 figure. It's important to note, because there is offsets to that. It's not a pure, all of a sudden you have $445,000. We will see decreases showing in the area of transportation aid and building aid in 2020-21 because of the fact we didn't spend the transportation money and we didn't do a capital outlay and we didn't go to bond. All those things will then offset in 2021, so there'll be a decrease. For building aid, you're looking at 82% of those expenses. You're also going to have an offset on the transportation aid of around 70% because if you didn't spend it, you don't get it. So at the end of the day, you have to take a look at all those particular areas as a combination of 1920 and 2021 because they will net out. We also had a 20% reduction in our final BOCES aid payment, which is a different category on the revenue report of about $115,000. But that did get offset because we gained about $116,000 in Medicare. And you may recall that Medicare is unable to give us a regular payment schedule. They seem to do it based upon however they feel. It almost seems like because we don't ever have a regular schedule for that. So that pretty much covers the June reports for revenue and budget status. And before I deal with July and August, I would open it up to any questions from the board.
Do you have any idea how much the offset will be in next year for some of those that you mentioned?
We're talking about roughly $600,000 in between transportation and building aid, so you're probably talking about $450,000. So it's pretty much everything that I'm saying we're up this year will get offset
next year.
And then we're going to still be a little bit higher than we had anticipated because of the other things that occurred, which was the utilities and sub-salaries and things of that nature.
$450,000 next year would not normally occur? Is that what you're saying? Because
right, because we would have spent
transportation, you're spending less.
Yeah. If we changed if we didn't have the remote issues with changing an architect, we may have got the capital outlay project in. If we didn't have 3 months of not transporting children, we would have $300,000 more that we spent there. And I should point out that we asked the state for guidance, and I think I mentioned this along the way, as to whether we had to keep paying the contractor or not. And they put us on their to-do list, and we still haven't had an answer on that. So there's that.
So to be clear, we're up 450 now, but will they be down 450 next year?
Just dealing with these specific items. There's other things that are going to occur as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So John, when we go to the public for a budget vote, we ask them, you know, for the $30,306,000. And I believe I'm correct in saying 1% increase in the tax levy is $160,000.
About 131, I believe.
Well, that increases my percentage then. But the way your numbers show between year-to-date expenses plus the outstanding encumbrances, we're looking at almost $1.8 million of surplus, which equates, using 160,000 equals 1%, 11.25% surplus. You've just explained a few things as to maybe how you're planning on using the money. But this was in a year we went to a 0% increase, correct? So I find this very astonishing that we had this large surplus because we still paid all our employees, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So actually, we're just talking about electric savings and a few other incidentals.
Well, the things I highlighted plus incidental.
Right, right. So where was, so you say 450,000, but I'm seeing 1.8 million because, I had asked our past superintendent to start a budget using our revenues, not our, existing budget from the year before. So I'm still looking at $1.8 million of surplus. We're allowed 4% according to the state, which is about $1.4 million, and this surpasses that. I'd like to hear more on, I'd like to see a spreadsheet. And we've asked for, it's been called a dashboard. I've asked for more accuracy because I didn't believe in the validity of your sheets here, because you said that they went through BOLCES, they weren't able to be changed on a timely fashion. But to that, we really don't know when we're in an excess or when we're in a deficit as a board. And I have a feeling that this year is going to be a little different. How do you plan on giving us the information needed from changing from the format that you've been using?
Well, let's address part of your question first, and then we'll see if we can figure out the second part. You are absolutely correct when you look at the budget status report that it shows 1.8 million. What you do when you're taking the calculation for fund balance is you compare your budgeted expense with your actual expense, your budgeted revenue with your actual revenue. And those net together for that year's either increase or decrease in fund balance. Of the 1.8 million, we had anticipated approximately 850,000 or thereabouts as the offset for the tax levy. And you have, using the items I highlighted plus smaller dollar amounts across the board, you have about 915,000 above that. So your 850 and your 915 is what you're seeing on that particular report. But you can't just take the budget status report on its own. You have to take all of the pieces together. So on the revenue side, we are below what we budgeted for revenue. So the two combined gave you that net $400,000. The reports that you have here, the budget status report, other than the fact that these are a little bit delayed, reflects what the budget is as of the time that they're printed. If you were interested in having one printed for each board meeting, we can do like the first part of October, second part of October. We can print in any fashion that you want that would satisfy your desire to have the expenses be more current. So,
well, I guess you're talking about a couple of different things, and that's what I've learned over the years is that we are talking about budget, which is inflated, and we're talking about revenues, which are actual. And we can't spend money we don't have. So that's why I asked last year to have a budget built off of our revenues, not our inflated budget. So I understand what you're saying in regards to the inflated piece, but at the end of the day, we asked for 30,306,000. We only spent 28,317,000. It's right on page 12. So that's the concerning part.
And when I see such a double-digit percentage of surplus in the budget, it's very concerning. I understand the revenue is a separate piece, but I do believe that maybe we should start looking at building a budget according to our revenues. It would be a little more responsible and to how we're asking for money from our taxpayers. So, thank you.
Anything else on June?
Anything else? No?
So then I'll address July and August. On the revenue side, typically July and August, nothing happens as far as new revenue. So take a look at the August 31st bottom line. We're up $35,000 in revenue for the year to that point. I did mention as part of my earlier discussion that we did receive excess cost aid and BOCES aid. Those are booked in against 1920 as revenue, so they become accounts receivable, and we did get the 80% of those two amounts. So revenue side pretty much flows where it is. I know the question has been raised along the way by the board as to what impact we're seeing so far from COVID in this school year in July and August. And I took a look through, and it was kind of interesting, actually. The expenditures are tracking right now, the right page. Through the end of August in 2019-20, we had spent $1,916,000. Through the end of August in 2020, we spent $1,692,000. So you can say, oh, there's $230,000 right off the bat. Got to be somehow related to everything that's going on. Interestingly enough, it's almost exactly the amount of the BOCES payment for the capital project that we no longer have to make, which came out. So basically, you're about $15,000 difference year to year through the end of August if you don't factor that one particular expense in. You have, sports are started up, you've got all the normal expenses that you'd have in the summer with the ordering of supplies, materials that would be needed for whatever teaching model we have through the course of the year. You've got the staff that's all been here that are getting paid their contractual salary amounts. So really at this point, there's not a huge change in what we're seeing as an expenditure pattern based upon anything COVID related, other than the CARES Act, which was a reduction of $315,000 in your state aid projection for 2020-21. It was then replaced with the pandemic adjustment that came through the federal CARES grant money. The issue is that the federal grant money has to be used for appropriate items related to the pandemic. So you're talking about, for us, Chromebooks, personal protective equipment, and those kinds of things. Both of those grants have not yet been approved by the state. They're in a pattern, but essentially if you want to look at it as a whole, they took $315,000 of your aid package and said you can no longer spend it on carpet, you have to spend it on these particular things. So you're going to be down a little bit in aid because of that. But other than that, things seem to be tracking about as where you'd expect them to be in comparison to last year, pre-COVID.
So, question I have is to accuracy to the reports, because they seemed inflated and numbers seem to be not necessarily always in the proper column. That was a discussion that I had that got a little heated on my part with you many months ago. And so, you know, I have found it's not until you get to the actual June 30th that things sort of balance out. So, you know, could you tell us, have you taken the time to correctly allocate money in these 380 lines so that we as a board have a general sense of where money's going and not going?
My answer to that would be yes. The information that's contained in the budget status report, if you were to take the approved budget and go through the appropriation line, matches it. Your total budget at the bottom of the last page matches what was approved by the board. So the figures reflected there are accurate.
Okay, so all the separate lines here are appropriately balanced as to the expenses budgets.
Yes.
Can I go back to the CARES Act? So that's from the spring, right? The CARES Act, there was the $320,000.
That was in the state aid run that they gave us in the spring, yes.
Right.
And then there was two forms that we had to fill out, two budget federal budget documents that had to be sent in. One was about 45,000, the other was 260,000 or whatever the number was. And those are the way the districts apply for the monies that came out of that CARES adjustment.
And so that hasn't, the state hasn't released that yet?
Nope.
And when they do release it, we have a limited window, or we have to spend on Chromebooks, PPE, things of that nature. So we can't really purchase those things until...
We have purchase orders out for a number of those things. We have not authorized the final expense. As late as last week, the state had not given us approval to go yet. Some of the personal protective equipment, the face mask, like this kind of thing, and hand sanitizers and disinfecting sprays and those kinds of things, we're purchasing that because we need it. And if it doesn't go back in against the grant where we have some of that budgeted, it would then come out of our general custodial maintenance line. We have to have it, so.
Thank you.
The other thing I do want to mention on top of all of this is, right now, the latest aid payment we got, which was in September, which was our lottery aid payment and textbook aid, was received at 100%. There continues to be discussion that come February, March, we're going to be back to the potential of a 20% aid cut. Kind of makes a lot of sense because we really don't have any aid payments to speak of between now and February anyway. You get into February, March, and April, that's where you get the bulk of your foundation aid. So if that were to happen, you'd be looking at over $2 million of state aid reduction to the district. So in the case where we do have an increased fund balance currently, and a higher fund balance than perhaps we would want to have normally, it may end up being a good thing for us if we do lose the 20% aid. The only other option would be, once you knew that was the case, to be making mid-year cuts to try to offset that expense.
How can you say that? It's a good thing to lose 20%.
Well, if you were in a case that you had no fund balance at all, as an example, and you lost $2 million of aid, you'd be in a deficit situation.
But that money's been accumulated through tax levy.
Correct.
So all our taxpayers have paid through an inflated budget additional funds to accumulate almost several millions of dollars in cash. And the state came and took inventory here about 3 years ago and knows exactly what they can pull from us. And you think that's a good thing?
My job as a business administrator is to try to protect the district financially. We've agreed in discussion at the board level and at audit committee that the fund balance figure needs to come down. We've talked about how we were going to accomplish that. But where we are right now, and what we have in fund balance, and where we may have to go if we lose 20% aid, it does put you in a good financial position, regardless of whether we can agree or disagree on how we got there. It's where we are today, and that's where we're going.
Well, I disagree with your thinking. It's disappointing that we can't find some type of actual change in your budget to offset it as a plan, a 5-year plan maybe, or a 3-year plan, but to just pull it from our local community's fund balance all at once is a little disappointing. And I understand that you have little choice in the matter, but you're not showing us any plan. You're not offering us anything. So I would hope you would work on that.
Good.
Any other comments? Okay. I can only imagine how challenging this is, to deal with something so catastrophic, so unknown, that we couldn't have anticipated anywhere near back, even as far back as mid-February, we couldn't have known this. I think it's well known that I was very supportive of a 0% tax levy. However, I think that was only because we had such a surplus, and I think that surplus is doing us well. It's protecting us during a very difficult time. Although I do agree with Mr. Hawk. This may cause, having that surplus may cause the state to look at what they can get from us. But I do appreciate your work in at least saving us a lot of heartaches if we didn't have that.
Thank you, and I understand this point completely, so we gotta figure out how we're gonna.
You know, without that surplus, we'd have to have drastic cuts or drastic increases in tax rates. So, 5-year plan would have gone right out the door February 1st, March 1st. So, thank you. Next, we have the treasurer's report.
There's no comment there, everything is in balance, and no comment.
Okay, so if I could have a motion to approve the treasurer's report for June, July, and August.
So moved.
Ms. Powell Fortna, and a second.
Second.
Ms. Gallo, thank you. Any comments, concerns, discussion? No. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. Next, we have a motion to approve a salary for Kathy Wright, the school tax collector. Could I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So moved.
Mr. Hawk, and a second.
Second.
Mr. Johnston, any comments, concerns, questions on that? And that is a minimal increase, if I'm correct.
Say extra, I'm gonna see this, the background for that.
It's 2.9%.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have a review of the minutes for the Facilities Committee meeting held September 3rd. Could I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So moved.
Mr. Hawk and Ms. Gullo seconding that. Any corrections, concerns, questions on that? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the approval of transportation contracts. As stated, can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So moved.
Ms. Powell Fortna, and a second? Mr. Johnson, any questions on that? Good. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have an addendum item, which is 6G1. We have a contract between Leadership for Educational Achievement Foundation and Fredonia Central School District. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please? So, Ms. Gullo and Mr. Hawk seconding that. Any discussion on that?
Yes. I would like to ask if assistant principals were asked to participate, and they chose not.
I'm quite sure that
Everybody's on.
when I looked at the addendum backup, they are included in that, Mr. Hawk.
Okay, all right, we just got this tonight.
Yes, yeah.
Elementary assistant principal, middle assistant principal.
You'd like to.
High school.
What's the middle?
Okay, that was my only question.
Okay. And that is, please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Forbes, but that is aidable at 80%?
70.
70%? So the district is paying 30% of that.
Correct.
Correct, thank you. So, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Okay, we have the approval of appointment to probationary position for Stephen Boy, am I gonna butcher this. Verstrate? Verstrate?
First straight.
Verstrate?
First read.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So moved.
Ms. Powell Fortna, and a second. Ms. Golo. Is he present?
He is here?
He is.
Yes. Stephen?
Great. Okay. We'll call on you in a minute, okay? But do you have any comments on this, or?
My comment is the wealth of knowledge and experience that this man brings to the district, I think will be something that's everlasting for a long time. He's well-versed, well-rounded, and thankful that he's opted to come join our family.
Great, great.
Kristen, do you want to?
I echo your sentiments. We're really fortunate to be able to hire Steve. He's a top-notch candidate. He's got top-notch skills, behavioral experience, and leadership skills that I think he's going to be a marvelous fit for our team, and I'm looking forward to working with him.
Great. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Welcome, Steve. I'm going to just call you Stephen if you don't mind. Do you have any comments coming into the district after all these nice things have been said about you?
Everyone embarrasses me with all the compliments much every time. I'm just excited to be joining the district. I'm looking for a forever home, and I really am hoping that Fredonia is going to be that.
Great. Great. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Next, we have item 7F and 7G on the addendum. We have an approval of increased hours for personnel for Valerie Stein. Could I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So moved.
Ms. Gullo and Mr. Hawk seconding that. Any questions on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. And then we have the approval of appointment of community education program instructors, instructor. Could I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please? Mr. Forrester, and a second? Mr. Chambrone. Did I miss your motion? Did you? It was a second. Did you make the motion though? And I missed it? But I didn't miss it. No? Okay.
I know.
Thank you. He won't be the best driver ed instructor though, of the school scene.
In your eyes, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Any questions on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much.
Policy discussion will be next.
Thank you. We have policy, thank you. We have the first reading on several of these, but Ms. Gullo, you had a couple questions on number 5660, the meal charging and prohibition against meal scamming.
Yes, and I did already mention it to Christine, but on page 2, there are still some fields that need to be filled in, and page 3.
Okay.
So it's just some clarification there.
Okay. And we will have that for the second reading, but if we could get that out much before that, that'd be appreciated, so that it's well defined. Then on item 8241, the patriotism, citizenship, and human rights education.
So my only question was, will this take effect this year, and will it be something that you do virtually, or we're gonna wait and see? I didn't know when it would come effective under the circumstances. Or if that needs to be ironed out before we set it.
Let me find out, because it's just the first reading, let me find out exactly, some things are, we're getting flexibility with, other things we're not.
Okay.
So let me investigate that.
And again, if you could get that out
Yeah.
right away, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So, as far as item number 5676, I would recommend waiving the second reading. This policy approval is time sensitive and would require, and is required by state education regulations. You have the option to waive the second reading for all listed policies as well, but we are only asking for a waiver of this one item, the second reading for this one item, for the regulation of state education. Could I have a motion to at least bring that to the floor for discussion? Mr. Hawk, and a second? Ms. Gallo. Is there any questions on that and issues as far as waiving the second reading on that? If not, all those in favor of waiving the second reading and approving that signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the approval of coaching resignations for fall sports, and we have Julian Lauder here. And if I could just have Julian Lauder and Stephen Romans, but I believe that we're only looking at, we'll make the motion for both of them, but the comments would just be for Julian. So if I could have a motion to bring that to the floor, please.
So moved.
Ms. Powell-Ford, and a second on that?
Second.
Mr. Johnson. And
I just wanted to take the opportunity to recognize Coach Lauder and thank her for her years and years of service. I'm not sure exactly, but I have a feeling it's more than 10. She has been an inspiration to the swim program, influenced an incredible number of girls, and you know, had some hugely successful seasons and coached girls into college swimming, and she will be missed from the program, and hopefully we will have her back at
yes,
some point.
yes.
So,
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that this would have been the 7th year in a row. However, I think she took some time off. This, I'm going to ask my historians of the district.
Can't be sure.
Yeah, okay.
Many years.
But yes, it's more than just the latest stretch.
Yes.
Yes, because I know she took some time away from that. But she will be missed for this season, and we wish her the best. All those, any other questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. Last we have a part of the addendum item, item number 8H1. It's an approval of emergency response plan for the district. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So moved.
Mr. Hawk, and a second? Mr. Forrester. Any questions on that? Okay. If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. And we are good, correct?
Yeah, you finished the addendum, so we're on to public comment.
Okay, great. Just wanted to check. So the board is reserved this time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board are asked to stand, give their name and address, and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less per individual and group. Audience members seeking a response should complete a board correspondence sheet and return it to the district clerk, Christine Slagle. Audience members are asked to adhere to social distancing regulations when addressing the Board of Education. Is there anyone who would like to address the board on any matter?
Hi, my name is Kara Trippi, 223 Lambert Avenue. I'm going to go a little bit over the 5 minutes. Please let me. I am here this evening to express my disappointment in the lack of preparedness and planning of the district, lack of true commitment to get kids back to school, and lack of Board of Education involvement. For background, I have a 7 and 10-year-old in 3rd and 5th grade. Myself and my husband work full-time jobs, and I have been working since March. On August 11th, it was presented that pre-K through 4 would be in person 5 days a week, and 5 to 12 would be starting at the hybrid plan, and that's how the school year would get started. That's great. My 7-year-old daughter would be in person 5 days a week, and my 5th grader could handle the hybrid plan. At least he was getting some in person. Then, in the matter of 7 days, on August 18th, the plan was drastically changed. So now I was in a scramble and feeling the same panic I did in March. So now my kids were remote with no options and no childcare. My friends and others were leaving the district left and right to a total I believe is close to about 50 children. What happened? So this is the question I started asking with phone calls and emails to administration. I asked repeatedly for the reasons for such a drastic change and got words sent back to me like transportation, cleaning, staffing, protocols without actual content. So when my emails were failing to be answered by the administration at the specific grade levels and by the superintendent, I started to contact the Board of Education. But again and again received the same response from Mr. Aldrich, and I quote, "The Board of Education's role is not to create or approve a reentry plan, but to hold the superintendent accountable to the district." This is in fact exactly what I was asking the Board of Education to do. Get some answers for these parents who have been blindsided by this drastic change in plan. I've been emailing and calling since the change was made and continue to. Finally, during the September 22nd board meeting, questions started to be asked of administration. Mr. Hawk asked, "What happened and why are other districts figuring this out?" Dr. Tagerty responded by saying Fredonia has a different philosophy than the other districts. And that answer went without question from this board. In fact, a community member attending spoke out and asked what the philosophy was. But it was never publicly addressed. So again, I would really appreciate if one of you would ask Dr. Tagerty what the Fredonia Central School District's philosophy is, especially regarding the reopening of this school, as I believe this would be holding the superintendent accountable. I do believe that what has been presented to the board throughout this reopening has been a gross misrepresentation of the actuality of the situation. They have been presented with instruction minutes. I cannot attest to the high school, but my children are getting nowhere near what they would be on a regular day in person. Just looking at gym, my son gets a 10-minute check-in weekly, and if in person, he has gym class 2 to 3 days a week. And my daughter never checks in with her gym teacher and is supposed to be getting 5 days per week. So when these minutes are being calculated and presented, I caution that the board not generalize this across the district. Also, it was presented that the testing was a go and was going to be completed in the elementary at the September 22nd board meeting. That didn't go well and was never completed, at least in my daughter's class. It was characterized to me as a fiasco and very frustrating. So these are just some examples as to what is presented is not always what is actually occurring. Now we have this hybrid plan. After not 5, but 6 weeks remote. But why did this have to take this long? How long did we have to wait to see how the protocols worked for pre-K to 2? We found out quickly that it worked great. Time to move on to the next grades. What was actually changed for this hybrid plan to happen? I have not heard or seen in the minutes that there were any hiring completed or drastic additions to transportation contracts. So why did it take until October 19th to bring these students into school? And the only grades going back to school is 3 to 5. Why? This district's return to school committee's last meeting this summer was July 28th. and they did not meet again until September 23rd. 80% of the families wanted in-person learning in the elementary and middle school levels. The committee should have been meeting ever since August 18th, but did not meet until September 23rd. This does not show a commitment to get these kids back to school. I do think that parents that continually email and call may be a big reason why this hybrid plan is set to start this week. I do not believe that my kids would have seen the inside of the school at all in 2020 without parents pushing. I would also like to know why this new hybrid plan, my kids in group 2 go to school 4.5 days less than the kids in group 1 for the remainder of 2020. How is this equal education? I don't care that it equals out in May and June. This is supposed to be a temporary or fluid with a goal to get kids in school 5 days per week. It should not be released as a plan until June. I also do not support the administration pushing back at parents that want their kids in school by decreasing the amount of instruction, as only to prove a point of, if you push, we will give you less instruction. I urge the Board of Education to start getting involved, ask questions and require answers, and start to hold the superintendent accountable. I was told during my phone conversation on September 21st with Dr. Taggarty that they need to hire more teachers to get 3 through 5 back 5 days a week. I question this as the school is dealing with a significantly lower population due to those that chose remote and those that left the district for private or to go with their parents to the schools that they work at. I also hope that there has been a check and balance process for pre-K through 2 to ensure that the class sizes are maximized. Dr. Taggarty told me on the phone that a huge hurdle is that the district was holding 3 spots in each class for the 20% that chose remote to come back if they want. She said if the district knew that those children were not returning, that we could bring back the rest, no problem. This is not okay. So you are catering to 20% and disregarding and making it impossible without adding teachers for 80% to return to school. However, if hiring 4 additional teachers is really all that can be done and is truly something that the district is working on to get kids into school 5 days a week in grades 3 through 5, I hope that the board can confidently approve. I also hope that the district's philosophy involves a plan to get all kids back to in-person learning as much as possible and as soon as possible under the state's guidelines, and that the wait and see approach is not the philosophy.
Thank you, Ms. Trivy. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Hi there, Julie McCullough, 131 Pulaski Street. I was unaware that it was board recognition night, but this actually works perfectly for what I was going to ask of everybody. So I would ask Mr. Aldridge, with your permission, of course, to address the board. I have spoken to each of you, most of you more than once, but I've never had the opportunity to actually speak to you as a group about some of the things that we discussed. So if possible, I would like to do that now. Starting with yourself, Mr. Aldridge. After we spoke, I realized that all of us have a lot in common. You mentioned that you have 2 daughters. I also have 2 daughters. Oh, 4 daughters. You mentioned 2 when we were on the phone, but I have 2 daughters, so we do have that in common. Mrs. Fortnott told me that her son is currently taking differential calculus, I believe. Very difficult course. I too am taking differential calculus, and I shared with you, as you shared with me, that it's very difficult over Zoom. It's a challenging course. Mr. Drollinger has seen me on the weekends getting help at the college. I find it difficult to do over Zoom. I need that in-person work. Ms. Gullo, you and I both have children that go to different schools. They started off great. That NCCS, 5 days a week, they're off to a great start. I'm sure you're happy with that as well. Mr. Forrester, Mr. Johnston, educators, current educators, former educators. Mr. Forster, I saw that Westfield's going to be bringing back K through 5 in person 5 days a week. That's awesome. Very good to see that. Mr. Giambrone, also former educator, Fredonia. Mr. Giambrone actually was the first person that ever interviewed me. Smart man. Mr. Hawk, successful businessman, hard worker. I respect that. All day, every day. You have a very solid work ethic. We can tell. I see you outside working in the streets, very knowledgeable with money, so I appreciate that as a community member. We talked about how the board has a big responsibility, but it is a volunteer position. I always have viewed the board as kind of the public gateway. It's our opportunity to speak to members of the community that have a little bit more involvement. You have maybe more access to administration. You have executive meetings and so forth. So going forward, I also wanted to pull out that some of your children I had actually had the pleasure of teaching myself. Probably around 2006, 2008, but I taught them middle school math right here at Fredonia. 5 days a week, 40 minutes every day. Now, Mr. Paschke can probably attest to this. Us math people, we're a special breed. I assure you, as I'm sure he can verify, actually Mr. Ludwig could probably verify this too. Your students, your children, they got taught 40 minutes, 5 days a week from bell to bell. And I would imagine that my former math colleagues are doing the same now. I know that they want every second of every period that they're given. So, keeping that in mind, I want some of you to think back. Some of you don't have to. Imagine your middle school child going to school 5 days a week, and then it suddenly being pulled from them. Then imagine they, in the summer, were told that they would be able to go to school 2 days a week. Then imagine having to tell them that after being out of school for 5 months, that wasn't going to happen. Then imagine telling your middle school children that they're going to have school, but they're not going to have any instruction on Fridays. Also imagine your middle school children being told that, well, they're going to be educated, but only about 4 hours a week total. Then imagine being told that your child has an abundance of study halls because their specials teacher was needed to teach the in-person kids. So they can't teach your kids. Imagine being told that your child also has an additional study hall in their schedule because, well, the person that was supposed to instruct it, they got pulled to the lower levels. So, too bad for your kid because the other kids needed it. Even saying these things out loud is probably hard for some of you to imagine, but I will tell you that I was told every single one of these things that I just told you for my middle school child. Ms. Trippi mentioned that nothing has happened since the beginning of August until now. There has been no adding of staff. There's been no change in transportation. I know because I've personally attended the board meetings and I've read through the minutes. There's also been a big misrepresentation by a number of people that the remote plan provides more instruction versus the hybrid plan. And I believe Ms. Gullo shared an email with the rest of the board that showed for my child, that simply is not true. My daughter actually receives 45 minutes more per week off of a hybrid schedule than a full remote. That's 45 minutes more a week for 3 days of school compared to 5. I don't understand. I still don't understand. I had the table, I showed the schedules, I broke down minute by minute. It is what it is, and that's what it is. I've lived it for 2 months now. I also don't understand that how, although Fredonia has one of the highest tax bases in the county, that we were the last district out of 18 districts in Chautauqua County, the last district to have all of our elementary kids in school for a minimum of 2 days a week. Dunkirk beat us by 2 weeks. Going forward, currently, and I know because I've done my research, Dunkirk and Fredonia are the only 2 schools out of those 18 districts that do not have all middle and high school students on at least a hybrid. Dunkirk and Fredonia are the only 2 schools that have their middle school on a complete remote other than 5th grade. Dunkirk and Fredonia are the only 2 schools in the entire county that have their high school on a complete remote. That includes the bigger districts, Southwestern, Jamestown. So, in conclusion, I present this information to all of you because we need your help. I have followed the proper chain of command. I have talked to more teachers than I can count. I have talked to Mrs. Troutman more times than I can count. I have talked to all of you board members, Dr. Taggarty, more times than I can count. And we're still at a standstill. Mr. Hawk asked, how are all of these districts figuring it out, but Fredonia's not? Mr. Hawk, I have that same question. I've called you with it twice now. I don't know. What I do know is that Mr. Forbes had mentioned that we have some money coming in. And through emails back and forth, it would appear that there's $257,328.09 remaining in the money allotted for PPE and such. That is after $46,000 spent on Google Chromebooks. So in conclusion, I ask that if what we have right now isn't working, which it is clear that it is not, then let's use some of that money and get some people in here that can push things forward. Because what we have now is not working. The teachers are drowning. The administrators are drowning. We have first year, second year, third year, fourth year administrators that need leadership, and we don't have any. I am asking you, please, to help provide my child with the opportunity that I helped to provide your children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKeown. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Hi, Mr. Aldrich. My first comment comes as the principal of Northern Chautauqua Catholic School. And as I'm sure you know, we have added a number of Fredonia resident students to our numbers because we were able to open all day, every day in person at our school. And it's a great thing. We've added some wonderful kids. I have 2 outstanding 7th grade girls that wanted very much to be on the swim team. And you know, you and I joked about the touch pads and a pool and whatnot. when they reached out to the Fredonia coach and said, you know, okay, we're going to NCCS, but we would like to be on the swim team, they were told it was not allowable. And, you know, their mothers expressed some concern to me about this. They said, you know, it just doesn't seem right. You know, you're paying Fredonia taxes. You want your kids to have all day, every day in-person instruction. You can't get that at Fredonia, so you're going to come to NCCS, which you have to pay for, but then your kid can't be on the Fredonia swim team. So I did some investigation and looked up the New York State Public High School Athletic Association website, and I went down the hierarchy and I talked to a gentleman named Dr. Robert Zayas, and you know what? It is allowable. NCCS kids can be on Fredonia sports teams. They can be on Dunkirk sports teams if they live in Dunkirk. They can be on Westfields. Now, it takes a little bit of work, but I'm happy to do the work. And I would like very much to request on behalf of my Board of Trustees, on behalf of the Fredonia families that are sending their children to Northern Chautauqua Catholic School, that the school board approve this partnership or collaboration, whatever you want to call it. There's a number of ways that we can make this happen. When I talked to Dr. Zayas, he said there were 3 or 4 different ways to get Catholic school kids onto the public school teams. It's happening all over the state, as a matter of fact. But he said that the first step was to get the Fredonia board to agree to examine this, and we're happy to look into it. I'll talk again to Dr. Zayas. I'll work with your athletic director. I'll talk to Tim Slade at Section 6. I'll do whatever we can do. But I want to get our NCCS athletes on Fredonia sports teams, particularly for sports, and probably only for sports that we can't offer at NCCS. Don't have a pool. Be great to have these kids on the swim team. They're probably going to end up at Fredonia High School after they finish their 8th grade year anyway. So I have a letter in writing requesting the board to please move at the next meeting to allow us to investigate this and see how we can get NCCS kids on Fredonia sports teams. And I'm going to present that to Ms. Schlegel, and I'll be right back. Now I'm going to speak as a taxpayer, as an administrator in this district for 17 years, principal 17 years, teacher 17 years, and I really feel for these parents. You know, they're here begging for something they should already have, and then they're asking, why is this happening? Well, you proved why it's happening when you approved that board motion to pay $23,000 for administrative coaching, because your leaders need coaching. There's no leadership here, top to bottom. You hire an interim superintendent, it's my understanding, Ms. Taggarty was working 4 days a week all summer, and Thursdays was her golf day. I hope she's not getting paid for Thursdays. Okay, now you said, Mr. Aldrich, that it's not your job to come up with a reopening plan, but it's your job to hold the administrators accountable, hold Ms. Taggarty accountable. Not happening. You've got Ms. Taggarty saying she doesn't want to make any major decisions for the next superintendent to walk into. Meanwhile, these families are struggling. You've got administrators putting out email blasts stating that they haven't done their job for the last few months. Meetings aren't happening. And these poor families are trying to struggle to find child care, to find education for their students. Now, in a way, I should be happy about all this because it's been a boom for a Northern Chautauqua Catholic school. We're filled to capacity. But, you know, as a taxpayer, as a member of this community, somebody needs to step up and take the lead here. You know, Mr. Hawk, I appreciate you grilling Mr. Forbes about the budget and about surplus and the fund balance being over what it was. I did that 3 years ago. And you've been on the board a number of years. And you must have supported the budgets that got passed. So, you know, I would, maybe you do it before instead of after the fact. everyone that worked for this district was kept financially whole through the entire shutdown. They all got paid, even now, took their raises the next year. You can't tell me that they're working the same number of minutes and hours every day that they would work in a normal school year. Now, I hear from some teachers they really want to come back to work. I don't see a whole heck of a lot of them here saying, we want to go back to work every day, all day, full-time, in person with kids. My son's been on remote. He's not coming back for hybrid. He doesn't want to. My son wants to come back all day, every day, in person. He's going to stay at home until you can do that. Why are we behind other districts? Because of a lack of leadership. You're all in leadership positions. Step up and lead.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board tonight? No? Then we will close that out. Announcements. The Fredonia Central School District was recently awarded a grant of $4,500 from the Chautauqua County Crisis Response Fund, the COVID-19 in partnership with the United Way of Southern Chautauqua County. District plans to utilize these funds for items, devices, apps that enhance or make equitable student access to education and technology. Right now we have the next regular meeting of the Board of Education is November 10th, at 6 o'clock right here in the high school library. As far as other announcements, I would like to personally thank all of our stakeholder groups who spent this last week interviewing for our new superintendent. They spent all day well, no they didn't, but they spent quite a bit of the day, they spent quite a bit of the day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, interviewing 3 different candidates. Spent a lot of their time volunteering, and I appreciate them having done that. There were a parent group, there was a student group, the administrators, and the teachers, and we thank them very much. Also, I know each and every one of our boards spent a lot of time this last week, spent a lot of late nights interviewing, and I appreciate all of your time and effort in that. It was not easy, and I appreciate everyone's input on that, and look forward to making an announcement at the November 10th meeting. With that, Ms. Taggarty, do you have anything to add as far as announcements?
Sure. I just want to update the board with regard to the return to school committee, which will be tomorrow at 3:30. The focus of that group will be to establish the next steps with the return to school, particularly focused on grades 6 to 12. And looking at where we are as 5th grade came back, a few updates to the committee, and 3rd and 4th. So that will happen at 3:30 tomorrow with the intent, the goal is to, when we are concluded with the meeting, that we will know exactly what the 612 model will be, what it will look like, when it's going to start, and how we will move forward. I also want to let the board know that superintendents across the district have been working with our local county health department as we look at the governor's new color scheme, if you will, with regard to the red, the orange, and the yellow, what we may or may not have to do in response to excessive COVID cases that may hit our area. And what we have been informed is that if in fact Western New York were to go yellow, where the governor requires testing of a certain population of the staff and students, at this point in time our county does not have enough of those tests to be able to provide those to us. So we probably would have to then look at going back full remote. So we're
survey.
We're anticipating, not anticipating, what we're trying to do is work through what that would look like if in fact that were to happen. So at the same time, we're saying we're moving forward with a hybrid. We want kids back in school. We're moving it forward as fast as we can. We also have to anticipate what happens if we were to go back full remote, based on input from the governor and what he's asking districts to do. Election day is coming up. We host election at Wheelock. I just want to personally thank Tim Keckelmeyer and our local Fredonia Police Department, because they will have a presence there throughout the day. So I just wanted to recognize them and let them know that we're appreciative. The other thing that came up over the last couple of days, there was a survey that was sent out from the middle school, high school, as well as from our students who run the newspaper, and it created some confusion. So what I want to do is go on record of saying is that the survey that was sent out through the middle school, high school to the parents was one to inform the committee tomorrow, information on that. The one that was sent out through the newspaper with the students was more for them to be able to generate their interest, their articles, as they would have done in the past when they were here in person and going forward. So I do have those surveys in front of me now, if anybody wants to look at those or see those. I apologize, I had not seen those before they went out, but at least there's some clarity that they were two very separate things. Unfortunately, the students don't have access to be able to send those out, so they did come from the high school principal, which created some confusion, so I wanted to clarify that.
Dr. Kennedy, I just had a couple of questions. The survey results that will be used in the reopening committee tomorrow, will the reopening committee receive those results prior to the meeting so that we can see where those results might be to help inform that dialogue?
Mr. Paskey, do you have those for us?
Sure.
Okay, yes.
And then, given, I appreciate that it's a goal tomorrow to get to a decision, what is the anticipated communication plan back out? If we're anticipating a decision tomorrow, when can parents, students, teachers anticipate some communication about what is the conclusion of that meeting?
And my answer to that is going to be based on what happens out of tomorrow. I'll be able to better address that, but I think we have to address that with the full committee. What I would not want to do is sit here and say within the next day we're going to let families know, because as you know, the last time we met, we thought we had things in place and then we didn't. And so I want to make sure that we are in agreement, that we have time to really step back, look at it, reflect on it, and then move it forward. So the timeline will be addressed tomorrow.
So I have a question to that. I know that we have refrained from having more than 3 board members on this committee because of a quorum.
Mm-hmm.
But I know in the past, we've allowed committee members, or I should say board members, to attend the committee, but without speaking, they were audience. Is that possible for tomorrow's meeting? And are we going to allow any public that wants to attend this meeting?
I would have to look to see, with regard to the legal aspect, if there's a quorum of the board, even if they're not speaking, if that would constitute a public meeting. So I would want to get clarification on that before. I just know that you have a quorum. No, but once you have a quorum of the board present and you're serving as a board member and you're there.
I'd be serving as a community member.
No, I understand that, but because you're still a board member, I would want clarification on that. I can ask that tomorrow and get back to the board of
So will I have
that.
an answer as to whether or not I can attend
Tomorrow.
before your meeting?
Yeah, I will give a call to.
And will you call me?
I
So
can
that
call
I
you.
can have dialogue with you as to questioning,
Mm-hmm.
if it's not allowable.
Yeah. So you only want me to call you if it's not allowable? Okay.
And second to that, is there public attendance to this?
There is, and that we've been adding committee members as people have
Or just
wanted to join.
spectators to listen?
I don't know about spectators. I'm just telling you, I didn't create the committee. I wasn't here when it was created, but I do know that people have joined in since then. I don't know what the process was originally of creating the team. I wasn't here for that.
Anything else?
I have an email and they don't know.
Mr. Zambrone, do you have any announcements?
No, thank you.
No? Mr. Hoff, do you have any announcements? No. Mr. Forster?
Just a question, actually, for Mr. Ford, maybe you would know, and this is just in regards to any student that is within our district, such as even going to BOCES or such as going off to NCCS. My thought was that they were always allowed to participate in activities that were put on, clubs and sports and stuff like that. Am I wrong in that, or is it, I mean, I thought that was just a natural given, that they were able to do.
I don't recall that request being made in the past, so I really would have no way to answer your question.
I just, for some reason in my head, I thought that, especially as a CSC chairperson down at Westfield, we made sure that the students who were going to BOCES knew that they were able to participate in the clubs and the sports that were part of the district, because they were part of the district. And my understanding is that if you're within the district as a taxpayer, that you should automatically be able to do those things. But I know that we'll look into that a little bit further, so I'm glad that that was brought up. The other question is in regards to that money that you said had to be spent on TPE, the $315,000, it has to be basically spent on money that is geared towards the pandemic.
Correct.
Hiring teachers, because of it, could that be geared towards the pandemic?
You could. The difference is that when you create the budget for the grant, and then you're reimbursed based upon what you spend. So if you were to go out and spend $50,000 on Chromebooks today, tomorrow I can submit $50,000 for Chromebooks, so you have the cash flow. If you hire staff, you get reimbursed as the staff is paid. So if they're paid, just for sake of discussion, $1,000 a week, you can only request $1,000 a week. And they're then hired under a federal grant, so if the federal CARES grant goes away, you now need either to lay the teacher off or then absorb the teacher into your next year's budget process if you needed to continue the space. If you did that, and you still needed the equipment, you now have a situation in your budget that you don't have equipment budgeted. And under New York State guidelines, unless it's a health and safety issue, board motion kind of thing, which Chromebook is not, you wouldn't have any money available to buy the technology that you also need. So really, you can accomplish what you're trying to do either way. You would have to use existing funds in your general fund budget for staff, or if you had a way to buy the Chromebooks, you could do that too.
Okay.
Nothing other than, I think tomorrow's reopening meeting is a significant step, and hopefully we can get to some decisions and move forward with communication to the community.
It's a primary goal. Primary goal.
Ms. Bella?
No, nothing, looking forward to tomorrow.
Mr. Johnston?
I echo their thoughts. I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
Being on the committee, thank you. Thank you for your
Can I ask,
contributing.
how large a committee is it? I don't think we've been informed of that.
It's large.
It's large. I don't, like, Kristen, do you know?
I would say it's around 30 individuals.
Okay. Mr. Paskey?
Nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight? Okay. Ms. Troutman?
We had our first group of fifth graders back today. They came in with big smiles. They were very happy to be there. I can say our teachers had big smiles as well. We were all very happy, and even teachers who weren't teaching them, made comments that it was so nice to have them in the building. I think they had a great day, and we're looking forward to group 2 tomorrow.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Drellington?
Yeah, we brought back third and fourth this week, so it was exciting to have those guys in the building, and the building finally started to feel whole again. It was really a good thing. We practiced a lot of the health and safety procedures these past 2 days. The kids are doing a great job with their wearing their masks, food distancing, and their hand washing procedures. But with those things we have in place, I feel confident that the building will remain healthy, and we'll have very few, hopefully, transmissions and things like that. So we're in good shape, and we look forward to continuing the hybrid with 3 and 4 and the full return as it's been with 1 and 2. And we'll do the meeting tomorrow and keep moving forward.
Thank you. Ms. Farrell?
Nothing tonight.
Nothing? No. Mr. Forbes?
I just want to thank the community for paying their taxes. One thing that COVID apparently did was cause people to want to pay earlier. So we had a pretty good run at the front end of the process. It's now percentage-wise leveled out. There is a 2% penalty currently, and that goes to 3% for November 1st. And then we would have the report for you for the November 10th meeting.
And Mrs. Slagle?
Nothing, thank you.
So the board anticipates going into executive session tonight for a brief issue. And with that, personnel issue. With that, I'm asking for a motion to go into executive session. Ms. Gallo, and a second. Ms. California. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, we are now in executive session. Thank you, everyone.